The cheapest brand new Ram you can buy today costs more than $40,000. Back in the 1990s, you could drive a brand new Dodge work truck off the lot for around 13 grand. Everybody wants to blame greedy manufacturers for that. But the real killer is a chicken tax from 1964 and a fuel economy rule that literally rewards Ram for building you a bigger truck. Let me show you who actually killed the work truck. I have spent about 20 years turning wrenches, and I will tell you the saddest thing that rolls into my bay these days. It is a working guy, a plumber, a landscaper, a framer, somebody who just wants a cheap truck to haul his tools and his materials, and he cannot find one. Not new anyway. The honest, stripped down, shut up, and do the job work truck is basically dead. And once you understand how it died, you are going to be angry, because almost none of it was an accident. Let me start with the truck that hits closest to home for this channel, the Dodge Dakota. In the year 2000, Dodge sold nearly 180,000 Dakotas. That is a lot of trucks. The Dakota was this brilliant in-between idea, bigger than the little compact trucks, but smaller and cheaper than a full-size Ram. It could take a V8, which almost no small truck could do back then. My buddy ran a Dakota with the 5.2 on his sprinkler business for years and beat it like it owed him money, and that thing just kept showing up for work every morning. It was the truck for the guy who needed real capability without a full-size payment. So here's the part that makes no sense. By 2011, Dodge sold about 12,000 of them, and instead of fixing it, they killed it. No replacement, just gone for over a decade. Now you might think a truck dies because it is bad or because nobody wants it, but the Dakota did not die because it was a bad truck. It died because of forces almost nobody talks about, and I am going to walk you through every one of them. But before we get to the villains, you need to see what we actually lost. Go back to the 1970s and 80s, and the American road was crawling with small, cheap trucks, and a lot of them were not even really American. Dodge sold a little pickup called the D50, Ford sold the Courier, Chevy sold the Love. And here's the funny part. The Courier was a Mazda. The Love was an Isuzu. Detroit did not even want to build small trucks, so they slapped their names on Japanese ones and sold them anyway, because the demand was that strong. These trucks were tiny by today's standards. They sipped fuel, and a working man or a kid with a first job could actually afford one. My first shop truck was an old compact pickup with a gutless 4-cylinder and crank windows. And I loved that thing. You did not baby it. You loaded it up, you drove it into the ground, and when something broke, you fixed it in an afternoon with hand tools. That was the whole point of a work truck. So if these trucks were cheap, popular, and useful, why can you not walk into a dealer and buy the modern version today? This is where it gets infuriating, because the first killer showed up decades before the Dakota ever died. It is a tax on chicken. I am not being cute. In 1964, Europe slapped tariffs on American chicken, so our government fired right back with a 25% tax on any truck built overseas. They called it the chicken tax, and here is the insane part. That tax is still alive today, more than 60 years later, 25%. If a foreign automaker wants to bring a cheap little pickup into this country, they either eat a brutal tax that prices it out of the market, or they build it here, which costs a fortune to set up. And here is where it gets truly ridiculous, because automakers went to insane lengths to weasel around this tax. This one tax is a big reason you cannot buy the Toyota Hilux, which is probably the toughest work truck on the planet, sold in basically every country except this one. Ford literally built the Transit Connect as a passenger van overseas, shipped it over with rear seats and windows to count as a car, and then ripped the seats out at a warehouse in America to turn it back into a work vehicle. Subaru once bolted seats into the bed of the little brat pickup, facing backward, just so the government would call it a car instead of a truck. That is how heavy this tax sits on the whole market. 60 years of your truck choices, warped by a fight over chicken. And I know what you are thinking. That explains the imports. But it does not explain why Dodge and Ford and Chevy killed their own American small trucks. So let me introduce you to killer number 2, and this is the one that really lights me up. It is the fuel economy rules, but not the way you think. Now, on the surface, fuel economy standards sound like a good idea. Make vehicles cleaner, use less gas, fine. But around 2011 and 2012, the government changed how those standards work, and they built something called a footprint rule. Here's what that means in plain English. They measure the truck's footprint, basically how long it is times how wide it is, the whole rectangle the truck sits on, and the bigger that footprint is, the lower the fuel economy target the automaker has to hit. Listen to that again, because it is completely backward. The bigger you build the truck, the easier the rules get. A giant truck gets an easier target than a small one. So picture you are Ram or Ford. You can build a small truck that has to hit a hard number, or a big truck that gets an easy number and sells for way more money. What are you going to build? You are going to build the big one every single time. The rules that were supposed to give us efficient vehicles quietly told every automaker to supersize everything. That is not an accident anymore. But the next killer is a quiet one, the kind nobody talks about because it does not make headlines. The work itself walked away. For decades, if you ran a business and needed to move people, tools, and gear, you bought pickups for your crew. That was just how it was done. But then the big cargo vans took over, the Ram ProMaster, the Ford Transit, the Mercedes Sprinter. And if you have ever loaded one, you understand instantly. A tall van holds more, it locks your expensive tools inside out of the rain and out of sight of thieves. You can stand up inside it and you can shelf the whole thing out like a rolling workshop. I have watched plumbers and electricians in my own town trade their pickups for a ProMaster and never look back. So the fleet buyers, the exact customers who used to demand a cheap basic pickup by the thousands, quietly left the pickup market. And when they left, the reason to even build a bare-bones work truck started to disappear with them. The demand that used to keep the cheap truck alive got poured into vans instead. But if you want to understand the final nail, you have to follow the money. Because there is one more killer, and this one is pure greed. Here is the thing dealers and automakers figured out. They make barely anything on a stripped work truck. But a loaded luxury truck, a Ram Limited or a Longhorn, with the leather and the big screen and the air suspension, that thing prints money. We are talking many thousands of dollars more profit on the same basic vehicle just because they piled features on top. So think about it from their side. Why would they spend money advertising and building a $13,000 work truck they make pocket change on when they can sell you a $70,000 truck instead? They would not. And that is exactly why the cheap work truck quietly disappeared. The average price people pay for a new truck has climbed into the $50,000 and $60,000 range, and the truck quietly transformed from a tool into a status symbol. It became a family vehicle, a luxury cruiser, a thing people finance for 84 months and never once put a scratch in the bed. The base work truck did not just die, it got shoved into the corner on purpose because there was more money in leather seats. By the way, if this is the kind of straight talk about trucks you have been looking for, hit subscribe. I get into this stuff every week. Now, I want to be fair here, because I am not one of these guys who thinks every old thing was perfect. Let me show you what this actually did to the trucks themselves, because it is kind of shocking. Ford killed the original Ranger in this country in 2011, the same year the Dakota died, and the Ranger was still selling. Then a few years later, Ford brought the Ranger name back, except the new one is way bigger and way more expensive than the truck they killed. Chevy did the exact same dance with the S10 and then the Colorado. The trucks that came back to replace our small trucks are not small. A modern midsize truck is roughly the size of a 1990s full-size truck. Park a first-generation Ranger next to a new one, and you will not believe they wear the same badge. Everything got inflated. The size, the price, all of it. So let me put a real number on what we lost, because this is the part that should make every working person mad. In the mid-1990s, you could buy a brand new, stripped-down Dodge work truck for somewhere around $13,000. Adjust that for inflation, and you are looking at roughly $28,000 in today's money. Now go price the cheapest brand new Ram 1500 you can find. you are starting well over $40,000. That is the work truck being taken away from the working man and sold back to him as a luxury item. Ford noticed that millions of people were priced out and starving for a small, affordable truck, and they built the Maverick. And credit where it is due, the Maverick was smart. It launched around $20,000. It is small, it gets great mileage, and people lost their minds over it. Waiting lists everywhere. It proved something I have been saying for years, that there is a massive hungry market for a cheap, honest, small truck. But even the Maverick has crept up in price since it launched. And it has to run a tiny little engine or a hybrid to survive those fuel rules we just talked about. It cannot be what the old trucks were. The rules will not let it. And the world keeps rubbing it in our faces. There is a whole underground scene of people importing little Japanese K-trucks, these adorable tiny work trucks that cost almost nothing and will haul a shocking amount. And right now, there are actual fights happening in different states over whether you are even allowed to register one. Some states are trying to ban them off the road entirely. Imagine that. People want a cheap work truck so badly they are importing 25-year-old mini trucks from Japan, and the response is to try to make them illegal. Meanwhile, Ram builds a small pickup called the Rampage right now. Today, a sharp-looking little truck. You just cannot have it because they only sell it down in Brazil. And I did a whole video on the wild trucks other countries get that we are locked out of, so if that makes your blood boil, go watch that one after this. Here is the good news, and I do mean good. Ram has finally admitted the obvious and says a new mid-size Dakota is coming back around 2028. After more than a decade of pretending the mid-size truck did not matter, they are crawling back to it because Ford, Toyota, and Chevy have been eating that lunch for years, while Ram sat there with nothing. I will believe it when I am standing next to one on a lot. But the fact that it is coming at all tells you the demand never died. Only the trucks did. So let me leave you with the honest truth, mechanic to owner. The affordable American work truck did not die of natural causes. It got killed, slowly, by a chicken tax nobody will repeal, by rules that pay automakers to make everything bigger, by fleet buyers moving to vans, and by dealers chasing fatter margins on leather and screens. Nobody set out to murder it in one shot. It was more like a bunch of people each cutting off a little piece until there was nothing left. If you ever owned one of these old work trucks, an early Dakota, a Ranger, an S10, whatever it was, do me a favor and tell me about it in the comments, because you guys have decades of experience on these things, and I read every single one. And look, if you are even thinking about grabbing a used Ram to dodge these crazy new prices, do not hand over a single dollar yet. Watch my video on the 11 things you have to check first, because a couple of those hidden problems can turn a cheap truck into a money pit the week after you buy it. Go watch that one next.